Hi, in this video we're going to be learning section 2.5, which is the order of operations, also known as Pemdas. P-E-M-D-A-S. So Pemdas is the order in which we perform different operations, and it's important that you follow this order, otherwise you're going to get the wrong answer when you're doing a math problem. Okay, and what does Pemdas stand for? Well, some of you might already remember it, but let me write it vertically here. P-E-M-D-A-S. P-E-M-D-A-S. Well, the P stands for parentheses. Okay, the E stands for exponents. The M stands for multiplication. I'm having pen problems here. Multiplication. The D, as you probably guessed, stands for division. The A stands for addition. And finally, the S stands for subtraction. All right. So Pemdas stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. And a lot of people think that there's actually 6 steps here because there's 6 letters. However, that's incorrect. There's actually only 4 steps to Pemdas. And let me talk about that now. So there's 4 steps. So the first step is parentheses. The second step is exponents. Now, here's the tricky part. The third step is both multiplication and division, all in one step, from left to right. Okay, so all in one step, and you have to do it from left to right. From left to right. Okay? And then your fourth step is actually going to be addition and subtraction. Also all in one step, from left to right. Although with addition and subtraction, the left to right part doesn't matter as much. Okay. So I'll just write same. All in one step, from left to right. Now it's really important that you realize the third step is actually multiplication, division, all in one step from left to right, because otherwise you're going to get the wrong answer. Okay, so Pemdas is actually a 4-step process, not a 6-step process. Okay, but now that we know what Pemdas means, let's see some examples. So, example, simplify. The instructions are simplify. And Pemdas is what we use to simplify things properly so that everybody gets the same correct answer when they're doing math. Okay, so problem number 1 is going to be parentheses -11 plus 9 divided by 3. Okay, so parentheses -11 plus 9 divided by 3. Now here, these parentheses are already simplified. So P is already taken care of. There are no exponents, right? So E is already taken care of. What's the next step? Multiplication and division. I'm just writing MD. So multiplication and division is our next step. So that's from left to right. But here we can see the only multiplication or division is this division right here. So 9 divided by 3. So that's going to be our first step, is 9 divided by 3. So the 9 divided by 3 is going to give us 3. So now we have negative 11 plus 3. And that completes the multiplication and division step. So that's our MD. And then our last step is addition and subtraction. And here, there's only one operation that we need to do here, which is negative 11 plus 3. Now, because these numbers are opposite signs, we keep the sign of the larger number, which is 11, and we subtract. So this is actually going to be 11 minus 3, which is 8. But we keep the sign of the larger number, which was negative, so that's going to be negative 8 as our answer. Okay, our answer is negative 8. All right, and when you're doing these problems, if it gets longer, you might want to go back through and check your steps, but this one was pretty short. Okay, so I want to do some more examples of these types of problems because there's a lot of different cases. Okay, so example number two. This one is actually a fraction. So this is going to be 20 minus 11 all over negative 3. Okay, so 20 minus 11 all over negative 3. So when you have a division bar like this, that's what this is called, a division bar. It's a special case. So with a division bar, it acts as parentheses. It acts as parentheses around the numerator and the denominator. Okay? That's what a division bar does. Okay, so that's what a division bar is doing. So secretly here, we actually have parentheses around the 20 minus 11 and parentheses around the negative 3. That's just a little detail that a lot of people don't know, but it is important that you understand that. So even though there weren't parentheses in the original problem, I went ahead and put parentheses around the top and the bottom, because then it'll be clear what we're supposed to do first. Okay, so the first thing we want to do with Pemdas is parentheses. Okay, so simplifying the parentheses on the top, we're actually going to be doing 20 minus 11. 20 minus 11 is 9. And then we keep the sign of the larger number, which was positive 20. So that's actually going to be positive 9. And then on the bottom, the parentheses don't do anything because negative 3 is just a single factor. So I'm just going to write the bottom as negative 3. Okay, so we just took care of parentheses. There are no exponents, so we're done with that. So now we're on to multiplication division. And here we can see there's 1 minus, so that means our answer is going to be negative. And then dividing, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So our answer is going to be negative 3. Okay, and then this problem didn't have any addition and subtraction at the end because we actually had to do that as part of the parentheses step. So that was actually right at the beginning because of those secret parentheses caused by the division bar. Okay? So that should be the correct answer there, negative 3. Okay, so let's go through a few more examples. Sometimes these can get a little bit more complicated looking. So this next one is going to be example number 3. Example number 3. And for this problem, we actually have brackets. So brackets are a special type of parentheses. They look like parentheses, but they're more angular, so they have a right angle there. So I'm writing brackets, and then 6 plus parentheses negative 3, and then I end my brackets, and then my brackets are squared. So the brackets are raised to the second power. Okay, but we're still going to be following PEMDAS here. It's just these brackets here, the angular brackets, are a type of parentheses. Type of parentheses. Okay, so following PEMDAS here, the first step is going to be parentheses. So inside of our parentheses, we actually have an addition to do here. We have 6 plus negative 3. Well, these are opposite signs, so we're actually going to be subtracting. We're going to do 6 minus 3 is 3. And then, because the larger number was positive, we keep the sign of the larger number. So since 6 was positive, 6 plus negative 3 is going to be positive 3. Okay, so we're going to have positive 3 inside of the brackets, and then the brackets are squared. And there, we actually just finished our parentheses step. So we did our parentheses first, and then the next step is exponents. Well, this problem actually does have exponents. So here the exponent is the square, or the second power, and we should know that 3 squared really means 3 times 3, which is 9. Alright, and so we finish exponents, and then there's nothing else to do here, so we don't have to worry about any of the other steps, so our answer is positive 9. Alright. Okay, so let's go on to problem number 4. Problem number 4. This is still the same section, 2.5. It's a big section with lots of individual cases. So for this next problem, we actually have 8 times 4 written as a dot. Remember that little dot there means multiplication. Minus 7 times 3. Okay, again, that dot means multiplication. Plus, parentheses, negative 10. So we have 8 times 4 minus 7 times 3 plus negative 10. So what we're going to want to do here, as always, is PEMDAS. So we're going to start with parentheses. The thing is, the parentheses here are the negative 10, and there's nothing to simplify there. It's just negative 10, so it stays that way. So there's no parentheses, and there's also no exponents. There's no exponents in this problem. So we just go ahead and skip ahead to multiplication and division. So remember, with your multiplication and division, that's supposed to be all in one step from left to right. So in particular here, we actually have 8 times 4 and also negative of 7 times 3. So there's 2 multiplications to do there. So working from left to right, we have 8 times 4 is 32. Okay? And then we have a minus, and then 7 times 3 we know is 21. So you should have 32 minus 21 plus negative 10. Alright? And that actually takes care of the multiplication and division. And notice we did it all in one step, and we did it from left to right. Okay, so that's done. Now our last step is addition and subtraction. So remember, with this minus 21 here, subtracting is the same as adding the opposite, so adding and switching the sign. So minus 21 is actually the same as plus negative 21. So here we have 32 plus negative 21 plus negative 10. Okay, because the minus is the same as plus negative 21. Okay, and then to do our addition and subtraction, First, I'm going to be combining the negative 21 and the negative 10. Now, you don't necessarily have to do addition and subtraction from left to right. They say that you're supposed to do that in our book, but honestly, it's not like multiplication and division where it's going to make a difference. So here, I'm actually doing the negative 21 plus the negative 10 first, because those are the same sign. So since they're the same sign, we keep the sign and add. Okay, so there we're going to actually have 21 plus 10 gives us 31, but we keep the sign, and the sign is negative, so it's actually going to give us negative 31. So we have 32 plus negative 31. And now with these are the opposite sign. So what do you do when they're the opposite sign? Well, opposite sign means you subtract. You subtract and you keep the sign of the larger number or the larger absolute value. Okay, so here the larger number in terms of absolute value is going to be 32, and that's positive, so we know our answer is going to be positive. Okay, so we're going to have positive of 32 minus 31, which is 1. Okay, so our answer is positive 1, but then obviously you're not supposed to leave the plus there in your answer. You just erase that. So you just write 1 as your answer. Okay, cool. So want to do a few more examples. There's all kinds of little cases here. Okay, so that was example number 4. I want to at least do a couple more. So example number 5 is up next. And for example number 5, we have 6 squared minus the quantity, 5 minus 2 cubed. Okay, so 6 squared minus parentheses 5 minus 2 cubed. All right, so for this one, just like all the other problems, we have to follow Pemdas. If you don't follow Pemdas with one of these problems, you might be able to get away with it on some problems, but then on other problems in my math lab, you're going to find that you're going to get the wrong answer. So that's why we're always doing Pemdas, because if you do it correctly, you're always going to get the correct answer, whereas if you don't follow Pemdas, sometimes you're just going to get the wrong answer because you did things in the wrong order. Okay, so it is important to follow it. Okay, so what's first here? Well, as always, first is parentheses. Well, here the parentheses that we have are right here. So inside of those parentheses, we still want to follow Pemdas, okay, which is kind of strange. But that means we're actually going to be doing those exponents first inside of the parentheses. So we got negative of 2 cubed. Keep in mind that 2 cubed is the same as 2 times 2 times 2. And we know that 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So first off, we're going to have 5 minus 8 inside of the parentheses. But we're still not done with these parentheses because we still haven't finished simplifying it. So inside of these parentheses, 5 minus 8 is the same as 5 plus negative 8, okay? And these are opposite signs, so we subtract and we keep the sign of the larger number. So the larger number is 8, and it's negative, so this is going to be 8 minus 5 is negative 3. Negative 3. Okay, and don't forget we still have a 6 squared minus this. So 6 squared minus negative 3. All right, and after we did all of that, we're finally done with parentheses. Okay, so we actually had to be careful. Inside of these parentheses, there were two operations. There was the exponents, and then there was the subtraction. Notice I did the exponents first. That's really important. because you still have to follow Pemdas on the inside, and remember that with Pemdas, exponents comes before addition and subtraction. Okay, but what we've got here now is, since we're done with parentheses, we can move on to exponents and do the 6 squared. Okay, so exponents is going to be 6 squared, and 6 squared is the same as 6 times 6. And I think we all know that 6 times 6 from our times tables is 36. Okay, so we get 36 minus negative 3. Okay, and that's actually going to take care of the exponent step. So now we're done with exponents. All right, and then we have 2 more steps. So the next thing is multiplication and division from Pemdas. And the multiplication here is really this minus times negative 3, which you could also think of as subtraction. But remember, if you're subtracting, you switch the sign and add. So in other words, these 2 minuses are going to cancel out. Okay, so if we cancel out those 2 minuses, we're going to get positive 3. So we get 36 plus 3. All right, so that takes care of our multiplication and division. It's considered multiplication here because this is technically negative 1, even though they didn't write it. So it's negative 1 times negative 3. And that gives you positive 3. So now we're on to our last step, which is addition and subtraction. So for addition and subtraction, we have 36 plus 3, which is actually 39. All right, and that's positive 39, because they were both positive. So as you can see, these problems get a little bit longer, but if you stick to Pemdas, they shouldn't be too hard. Okay. All right, so that was example number 5. All right, so let's take a look at a couple more examples. That was number 5. So number 6 is next, example number 6. And I wanted to show you this one because it has a bunch of negatives, and I want to make sure you're solid on those. So this one is 9 minus parentheses negative 2 parentheses to the 4th power. Okay, so 9 minus parentheses negative 2 to the 4th power. All right, so as always, we're going to be going through Pemdas. So starting with parentheses, these parentheses are already simplified. All we have inside of it is a single number, negative 2. So that's considered simplified. So parentheses are done. So we're going to do exponents next. So with exponents, keep in mind that your exponents are actually just referring to this part right here. So the 4th power does apply to the parentheses, but it doesn't apply to this minus out front. That minus out front is considered part of addition and subtraction. Okay, so what we got here is for our exponents, we're just going to be doing negative 2 to the 4th power. So how do we do negative 2 to the 4th power? Well, one way of doing it is to write it all out. That's probably a good way. So we've got negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. There's 4 of them because it's negative 2 to the 4th power. Okay? So crossing out these minuses, the first 2 minuses cancel, and the last 2 minuses cancel. So we're actually going to get 2 times 2 is positive 4, and positive 4 times 2 is 8, and then 8 times 2 is 16. So we get positive 16 for the negative 2 to the 4th power. However, don't forget we still have this minus out front. So we do have a minus in front of the 16. So what we're going to have now is actually 9 minus 16. 9 minus 16. Okay? So that took care of the exponents. Exponents was kind of a big step there, but we went ahead and did that. Okay, and now with this problem, there's no multiplication and division, so we don't have to worry about that. So we're on to addition and subtraction. And for addition and subtraction, remember when they have opposite signs like this, you keep the sign of the larger number, which here is 16, and you subtract. So we know our answer is going to be negative. Okay, so it's going to be negative of 16 minus 9, and 16 minus 9 is 7. So our answer is negative 7. All right, and that finishes number 6. Okay, all right, so that's not so bad. And then for number 7, I'm going to try to throw a little bit harder problem at you to make sure you understand absolute value. Okay, so for number 7, we're going to be working with absolute value of 7 minus 43 divided by 3. Okay, absolute value of 7 minus 43 divided by 3. So the new thing in this problem is actually just the absolute value. That's the new thing. So for an absolute value, you're supposed to treat them as if they were parentheses. Okay? So let me write that down. Absolute value is a type of parentheses. It's a type of parentheses. Okay, and of course, they're not just a type of parentheses. At the end, you also need to make sure that it takes the positive version of the number. But here, because we have two terms, we're going to be doing the 7 minus 43 first, and then we're going to take the absolute value. Okay, so following Pemdas, our first step is parentheses. But inside of these absolute value parentheses, we have 7 minus 43. So how do we do 7 minus 43? Well, you can write it out or do it in your head, but they're opposite signs, so we subtract. So we have 43 minus 7. We're going to have to borrow from the 4. The 4 becomes a 3. And then we get 13 minus 7 is actually 6. Okay, so 13 minus 7 is 6, and then 3 minus 0 is 3. So we get 36. But keep in mind that the larger number was actually the 43, which is negative, and we have to keep the sign of the larger number. Okay, so we're actually going to have 7 minus 43 gives you negative 36. So that's going to be negative 36. So now we have absolute value of negative 36 divided by 3. The thing is, because absolute value is a special type of parentheses, you actually have to go ahead and do the absolute value now. They're not just parentheses, they're a special type. And we know from a previous section that the absolute value is always positive. So this negative 36 is actually going to end up becoming positive 36. So the negative goes away because of the absolute value being positive. So we get 36 divided by 3. All right, so far we've taken care of parentheses. Parentheses was a big step here. And taking the absolute value is actually part of the parentheses. Okay, and then for the rest of the problem, we don't have exponents, so we don't have to worry about that. All we have left to do is this division. So that's our multiplication and division step. So 36 divided by 3 is actually 12. Okay, so our answer is going to be 12. All right, we didn't have any addition and subtraction, so we didn't have to worry about that. Okay, cool. Very cool.